All right. So we're talking about listing presentations this week. And
Yes.
it's amazing. I've been in the industry since I was 20 years old, 21 years old. And I'm 40 now. So it's a long time. It feels like a long time, but it feels even longer. So my mom was an agent when I was a kid. I remember driving around town. I remember when lock boxes were, manual. You had to go pick up the keys from the broker, bring them back. I remember the book, the MLS book that, had listings and everything. And it's amazing how far technology has come in so many areas of real estate. And yet so many things are still the same. And
Hmm.
I think listing presentations are one of those things. Like some people have gotten fancy with a, tablet. They bring a tablet. They've got a nice little, slideshow that they go through. They still probably have the, listing agreement there with them printed manually, or maybe they're, doing a DocuSign at the end or something like that. But it really is the same thing it's always been, right? Like we all have our, folders, and we've got some pretty photos in there, but there's not really some, massively evolved tech, savvy way to do listing presentations. And so this is one of the things that they all look the same, right? Like
Hmm.
they're all exactly the same. And so what does GMA do, or how can you set yourself apart and create a massively different listing presentation through the GMA system?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you 100%. It's, one brokerage or to another or one agent to the other. I mean, it's the same at the end of the day. It's how many followers you have on YouTube or on your
Right.
Instagram and all that stuff. And so, and I know that a lot of agents also, I call it paying for the bragging rights of being with a global brand, to where you pay
Mm-hmm.
fees to where you can say, hey, our brokerage is in, 20, 60, 100, 120 countries, whatever that may be. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing, because a lot of these listings do not essentially go to the places you want them to go. It's kind of like, if you've got a listing in Dallas, Texas, and you think because you're going to put it on your .com that it's going to be seen by people in France or Italy or Europe in general,
Mm-hmm.
that's not the case. And so that's the problem. It's that as agents, we've become very reactive rather than proactive. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the biggest proactive ways is the GMA, value proposition. And what that is, just to kind of go over it just a little bit, is really educating the seller from the get-go to say, hey, I know you're familiar with listing presentations. I know you've probably are interviewing other agents before me or after me or tomorrow, whenever that may be. But I am different because I'm part of this global organization that's very proactive in the way that we market ourselves and market the listings that we have in this network. And it's something that most sellers and even most agents have not heard the terminology of it. It's what we call co-marketing. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of agents think that it's co-brokering, which has nothing to do with it. And those are two
Right.
different things:
Right.
co-broker and then co-marketing. The co-marketing is something, obviously that we created back in 2006, to where, again, if you've got a listing, how do you bring the right buyers? And
Right.
at the time, it was morely for the second home markets, to where that's a little bit more difficult, to where you've got to
Mm-hmm.
spend a lot of advertising dollars. And so, yeah, you can spend a lot of money with Rob Report, DuPont, Unique Homes, and every other publication, or this website and that website. But at the end of the day, it doesn't provide the exposure that you want to.
Mm-hmm.
So we created the co-marketing system, to where now as an agent, you can come to the listing presentation and offer what we call an a la carte service, to where different options. So option number one, Mr. Seller, here's a list of everything that I'm going to do for you locally. And that comes from everything you just talked about, from the sign in
Mm-hmm.
the yard, the MLS, knocking on doors, the open houses, and social media.
Mm-hmm.
But Mr. Seller, what I'd like to do is go, beyond and above that, to be very proactive. As I mentioned, is that I'm going to look at what's called the real estate migration patterns of where we live today. if you are in the south of France, then go to the Germans and the English or the Dutch, right? If you are in Dallas, Texas, again, I've said it 1,000 times, go to California, go to New York and other places. In every part of where we are today, it doesn't matter if you're in the US, if you're in Canada, or if you're around the world watching this, you know where the buyers are coming from, right? I was talking to someone recently that about Nigeria. To where you don't think of Nigeria to have the real estate market to where you can co-market properties, but you do, because now Nigeria, the capital of it, is getting very like technology savvy, with a lot of these companies coming from India, coming from Japan as well. All right, so everywhere you are around the world, it's moving, right? And so what we do is, yes, we educate the seller that we can co-market their listing. The key here is to essentially what I call creating your own army of agents wherever in the world it makes sense to promote and market that property.
Yeah, because agents sell homes, right? Agents are basically matchmakers. And so what a lot of times clients don't realize is that behind the scenes, outside of MLS, within each brokerage, or even among, board memberships or whatever it is, we're networking with each other, coming to each other saying, hey, I've got a buyer who's ready to go. I need this, 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 and this, right? Or I've got a seller and here's what's about to come on the market, right? And if you've got any buyers, just know this is happening. And so being able to say to, instead of just the agents in your local area, but to say to a seller, hey, I've got agents, boots on the ground all over the world, or even within, like you said, if I'm in Dallas, I want, somebody from California looking at, I want an agent marketing that listing in California, because I'm going to find a buyer way more quickly in California than I am even in Dallas sometimes. So it really just exponentially changes the game as far as eyeballs and views of that property, which changes the likelihood of how quickly that property is going to sell, because I'm tapping into that many more databases. And I think once the seller understands that you're exponentially driving, customers, potential customers at a global scale, it's not even comparison into any other listing presentations they're going to look at that day.
No, absolutely. But it has to be done again. It has to be done in a very legal way, right? And this is the $1 million word, because a lot of agents, again, cut corners and try to do things that, are not legal, to where, I'm going to take this property, I'm going to go market it on my social media without the authorization of the listing agent, the authorization of the seller. And that is very illegal. And a lot of agents still haven't got that in their heads yet, to where if your broker found out you were doing that, trust me, you wouldn't be happy with you. And so what we've done with the GMA is that we have created all of the documentation needed between the seller, wherever the property is located, and that listing agent, again, because the seller has to give in writing the authorization to that listing agent, for that listing agent to take that listing outside of that jurisdiction, and to say that and explain to the seller that, hey, other agents around the world, part of this network, are going to market that property as their own, meaning that their name, their phone number, contact info, everything's going to be on there within limitations. And that's the words again, within limitations, because the training that we do, it will kind of educate the agents on things that they can say and things that they cannot say, or things they can do and cannot do, because again, it's extremely important. And so again, with the technology that we've created through the GMA network, now everything is done online. To the agreements it can be done literally in less than 5 minutes, as you know. And so the key words again here is the legality of it. Between the agents, everything has to be in writing. This can't be a handshake, because at the end of the day, agreements are going to be needed between the brokers involved in the transaction. Then you're talking about obviously fees distributed. This is what we call the commission disbursement agreements that we have. So everything again has to follow a process.
Right. So what else in the listing presentation, in that a la carte menu, what are other things that they can do to separate themselves from every other listing agent?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a Castles and Estates magazine. That's a digital version to where when GMA agents become a member, they have what's called a personalized version of the magazine, meaning that the page 2 of that magazine is going to have their picture, their info. So when you send it out to your sphere of influence, it's kind of like, this magazine is offered to you by Ashley, and so you can send it out to all your clients. You can attach a nice little letter, an announcement with it that says, hey, the world is changing, and so I've decided to become a certified global marketing agent to help you buy or sell anywhere around the world. And this magazine comes with it. Please enjoy all the beautiful properties. And so in this personal edition as well, it will say that, all the properties they don't have the name of the listing agent. So what's going to happen is that it says, please contact the agent on page 2 for more information. So when you, again, go on the listing presentation, you're showcasing your global real estate portfolio to those sellers, which is one of the first things we teach agents is how to, again, legally borrow listings from other agents in the network to, again, create your global real estate portfolio.
But they can also submit that. They can say to that seller, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I can feature your listing in this magazine that is being viewed all around the globe. So again, that seller feels like they're getting something tangible that no one else is offering them, or it's costing that listing agent far more to do that in DuPont and all those other, places. And so the Castles and Estates one, it's valid. The title alone is validating, right? Even if they're not listing a luxury or a castle, they can still say, hey, I'm going to market your property differently than everyone else. And I think that that's where people get lazy and, comfortable, and they think that the MLS is enough and syndication is enough. And it's not anymore. And so you do have to get creative with your marketing and, and creating videos and, all of those things are great, but this is another way to separate yourself because lots of people are doing videos now for listings. So it's not necessarily a differentiator.
Yeah, I'll tell you my favorite joke for realtors. Okay. And this one's going to hurt, but it's the reality of it all. I call it.
I can't wait.
Okay, this is a good one. But the 3 P's of a realtor when they take a new listing, right? So they put a sign in the yard, they put it in the MLS, and then they pray for the phone to ring, right?
Yeah.
And so another P for you here is proactive, what we've been talking about. It's just going out there on the listing presentation. And this is a cool thing about this. What happens to one of your listings when you take it and, it doesn't sell as quickly as the seller was hoping to? Then the seller starts calling you every 5 seconds going, hey, Ashley, what's going on? What's going on? Here's what I also call a timeline listing presentation, to where when the seller starts calling you every 5 minutes, you can say, listen, do you remember when you can refer back and say, hey, remember when we talked about the global marketing agent and the co-marketing system? And they'll go, yes, of course I do. And you'll say, you know what? Within the next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to concentrate on putting your listing in the top 10 metropolitan cities of the US. And this is how I'm going to do it. And so we also, something we didn't talk about, we do not set fees, right? Because that's not who we are, what we do. But we have different fee commission structure, educating the agents and then educating the sellers on how to entice other agents to work a little bit faster and a little bit harder. And so I know that what I'm about to say is going to blow the mind of a lot of agents, but even in this market today, we have agents in the network, and we've had this company again since 2006 for 18 years now. Agents who go on listing presentations and do, Mr. Seller, everything here, the local is 6%. Now here is 7%. And this is why we want to do 7%. And we have agents, believe it or not, if you're hearing this, that are negotiating 10% listings. And I did say this correctly, because as a 10% listing, if it's a property that's very unique, it could be an island, it could be a castle, it could be, something
Mhm.
very spectacular. And, the
Mhm.
seller knows that that property is going to stay on the market, unfortunately, for a few years at times. And that's not me
Yeah.
saying, it's just proven fact.
No, that's
And so,
right.
yeah. And so
Truth.
what happened? Yeah, it is. So what happens to a property that is listed locally, that stays on the market for 2 years? Price reduction after price reduction after price reduction. So when you go do the numbers
It's
and you
stale.
educate this, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. You say, hey, listen, let's negotiate this much, 8%, 9%, 10%, because we are going to go that route rather than just kind of sitting on the market,
Mhm.
again, hoping for the phone to ring and do price reduction
Right.
after price reduction. I mean, that will blow the mind of a seller. And most sellers around the world, I don't care where they are, what language they speak, they will understand the power of numbers, and numbers don't lie.
Right.
And this is what
Right.
the GMA value proposition does as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That extra 1, 2, 3, 4% is far less than what the, 10, $50,000 price drops that you're making in order to get out to get seen again, to bump it up to the top of the list. And yet, if you give that extra percent to the agents instead, they are far more motivated to go out
Hmm.
there and keep that at the top of the list. And then it never gets stale. It never gets to that point because all of a sudden agents are like, oh, I'm going to sell this house. You give
Yeah.
them a challenge and you give them an incentive to do so, then they're going to do it. They're going to. That's what salespeople are, right? They love a challenge. So giving them an incentive to do so more quickly is far more cost effective than just dropping the price over and over and over.
Sure.
The
Yeah. And,
seller will absolutely get more that way.
yeah, absolutely. And, last thing I'll say is most agents, and again, I'm not focusing on, I'm not trying to make agents seem bad or anything, but uh, most again, when they take a listing or when they go on a listing presentation, they don't have solutions for the worst case scenario. And the worst case
Mhm.
scenario, sometimes the house doesn't sell, or again, a lot of things can happen. And so with the GMA value proposition, there's so many, if the seller is not willing to do the GMA route the first day, right? Because
Mhm.
he doesn't want to do extra fees, or he believes that his house is going to sell tomorrow, which most
Right.
sellers do, right?
Right.
Which I hope for them, but at the end of the day, it doesn't. And so what happens again to the listing agent 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks into it? They don't have any more solutions. They're stuck.
Mhm.
I mean, what are
Right.
they going to do? Open houses every day? No.
Yeah.
And so this is where with the GMA value proposition, you can say, you know what? I was looking, at the demographic of where we live now, and I see a lot of people coming in from Wisconsin, a lot of people coming from Illinois. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and co-market your property with agents in Illinois who are part of this network. Because
Mhm.
if you are calling, this is another thing to be part of the GMA is so important. If you call upon an agent tomorrow, which I did yesterday, I told you this on the Zoom we were earlier, for a $42 million listing. If you call an agent tomorrow and say, hey, I would like to co-market your listing, that agent over there is going to think I'm absolutely crazy and hang up the phone on me. And that's the beauty
Right.
about the GMA, is that when you call another member, when you go on the technology platform to see these listings, it's done. The seller already knows, the
Yeah.
agreements are already done.
Right.
You don't have to convince anyone. You can just go full speed.
Mhm. Yeah, and you get access to all of the marketing, photos and everything to create your own stuff or to repurpose the listing agent stuff. So you're not having to wait until somebody sends you or, gives you the right materials or having to come up with your own description or anything like that. We've got all of that at the fingertips. And so it's immediate. You can go and say, hey, I want to co-market. We don't teach this, but you could go co-market 50 listings in one day if you wanted to. But that's the
Mm-hmm.
other thing, is it does give you the consistency where you could just pick one property a week and share that with the seller and go, hey, these are other opportunities that we have, and your listing is being shared like this in all of these other places. And we've even got maps that you could share, and they could screenshot and put those in the listing presentations to show the seller truly, here's all the dots, right? This is where all of our boots on the ground are, and nobody else has access to this. And I think I was always, it amazes me, you know, what we do every day. It all goes back to what we did in kindergarten with show and tell, right? We tell people all the time why they should do something, what it is, you know, whatever, but it's really hard to convey and show them why it matters to them. And so sometimes even just that visual, that graphic, that, you know, whatever, that can make the impact that your words are not making with someone sometimes, right? So even just being able to share the maps of here's all of our agents, here's all of our listings that this GMA network brings to the table will validate you and set you apart from every other listing appointment they're going to be in. And that, I think, is where, you know, the brilliance of the marketing in and of itself that GMA provides, because we are proactively trying to, you know, market. We're not just letting buyers come, you know, we're getting it in a totally different way than most listing agents ever will. So
that's for sure.
It's incredible. Yeah. All right. Well, anything else we want to talk about with listing presentations?
No. Yeah, we're good. I mean, awesome. I think it, you know, obviously goes into the training. It's just the start to get people thinking, like, how can I be different? What can I do different? And this is by far very effective. So, you know, hope to, you know, if they have any questions, they can always reach out to me, and throughout the LinkedIn. I know we're on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook right now. So don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.